Here's your rewritten scene without any headings. The room was packed. Presidents, journalists, world leaders. The tension hung thick like smoke. Cameras from BBC, CNN, and Al Jazeera rolled, their lenses focused at the center. US President Donald Trump leaned into his mic. His voice boomed across the grand international summit. African leaders began, loud and confident, are undermining Western partnerships. They're abandoning democracy, progress, and the help we've provided. The room stiffened. Not a breath. General Ibrahim Traoré sat still, full military uniform, medals gleaming, his face calm, unreadable. But the words stung. Somewhere deep in the crowd, a young African student clenched her fist. In Burkina Faso, a mother wiped her hands on her apron as she stared at her small TV. Confused, angry, Trump pressed on. Africa needs guidance, not rebellion. The air shifted. Traoré slowly pushed his chair back. The metallic scrape of chair legs on marble floor cut through the silence. Every camera zoomed in. Millions watched on phones, in bars, classrooms, living rooms, holding their breath. Standing tall, Traoré locked his eyes on the main camera. He didn't shout. He simply said, "Stop meddling in Africa right now." Silence. Terrifying, electric silence. Within seconds, the clip rocketed online. 15 seconds after Traoré spoke, Twitter exploded. #StopMeddling trended in 33 countries. 4 million views in 5 minutes. Inside the summit, Trump blinked. He had expected applause or silence. Not this storm. Traoré remained standing, his voice calm and steady, like a father scolding a guest who had overstayed his welcome. Africa is not your experiment, not your backyard, not your property. We are not here to beg. We are here to build. Gasps rippled through the room. The South African ambassador covered her mouth. A Nigerian delegate nodded gravely. Even the French interpreter's hands trembled as he relayed the words into stunned earpieces. Across Africa, people gathered, in front of screens. A grandmother held her grandson tightly, whispering, "He speaks for us." In American college dorms, students reposted the clip. "Why isn't anyone this brave here?" In Paris, a journalist whispered, "This is history." But the most shocking moment was still to come. Trump leaned forward again, now faltering. "Well, look," he stammered, adjusting his tie. "I meant no offense. But let's be honest, many African countries are turning their backs on global progress." He forced a smile. No one returned it. Traoré stood firm, silent, his silence louder than any reply. Trump pushed on. "We've invested billions in aid. How can you say we meddle?" Traoré stepped forward. The cameramen stood taller, adjusting their focus. This was no longer a speech. It was a reckoning. "You invested in keeping us dependent," he said, his voice steady. "You've built roads to take our resources. You called it aid. We called it theft." A woman from Mali broke into tears. Her father had died in a foreign-owned gold mine. The words hit like hammers. Trump shrank back into his chair. Traoré's gaze turned to the cameras, to every home, every screen. "My mother died in a hospital with no electricity, while foreign embassies 2 blocks away ran air conditioners, day and night. Don't talk to me about your investments." The silence was absolute. Traoré inhaled deeply. Then, as if telling a tragic bedtime story, he continued, "Let me tell you about a village in northern Burkina Faso. I was there last month." The massive screen behind him flickered on. Images appeared. Burnt homes, ashes, a broken school bench. This village had peace, until a foreign mining company arrived. Soldiers were sent not to protect the people. They came to protect the gold. A few leaders shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. The world was watching. If you want, I can also polish it further depending on your purpose. For film script, book, viral speech, or powerful monologue, should I? Here's a rewritten, tightened, and more cinematic version of your scene. Without headings. One night, militants raided the village. The army didn't stop them. My people cried for help. None came. Mothers ran barefoot into the forest, clutching their babies in their arms. I found the village chief 2 days later, sitting alone, holding his wife's necklace. She had died trying to hide their daughter. Trump looked away, rattled, but Traoré didn't stop. "You say we're the problem. We are trying to clean a mess we didn't create." The screen behind him lit up, filling the room with the image of a young girl's eyes, wide, empty, unblinking. She hadn't spoken since that night. Somewhere in the audience, someone sobbed quietly. Then Traoré asked, his voice low but cutting through the silence, "Mr. Trump, how would you lead if that girl was yours?" The room couldn't breathe. Trump paused, then reached inside his jacket. Slowly, he pulled out a folded letter. The edges were worn, the ink smudged by time and perhaps by tears. "This," he said softly, "was written by Thomas Sankara before he was murdered." A collective gasp swept through the hall. Everyone knew what was coming. He wrote this days before he died, warning us that Africa must stop being owned by foreign debts and false friendships. He unfolded the paper with care. Some leaders lowered their heads, even journalists, cameras. Roland dared not interrupt. "We must choose dignity over aid." Traoré read, his voice trembling but steady. "Freedom over loans, life over silence, and if we must die, let it be standing." Trump shifted in his seat, hands folded tightly, lips pressed thin. "We are not your chessboard," Traoré said, eyes locked on Trump. "Our leaders aren't puppets. We will not trade our people's lives for trade deals." In Nigeria, a mother dropped to her knees in her living room, tears streaming down her face. Her son had been killed by bandits 2 years ago. No one had cared. In Ghana, a girl whispered to her sister, "Why do they hate us?" The clip raced across the internet like wildfire, and Traoré was far from finished. He reached for a folder handed to him by his aide. "This," he said gently, holding it up, "was drawn by a child in Ouagadougou after her father was killed." He lifted a crude drawing, thick crayon strokes, showing a tall man in military green, Traoré himself, and a small girl with wide, empty eyes. Behind them, flames, planes in the sky, a coffin with no name. At the bottom, in shaky handwriting, "Please protect us." The room shattered into silence. "Her name is Mayam. She's 8. She doesn't understand politics, but she knows loss." Traoré turned back to Trump. "You speak of partnerships. But for us, your partnerships come with bombs, debt, and death." Trump opened his mouth to speak, but Traoré raised his hand, calmly. "This isn't about ego or power. This is about a little girl who drew what she could not say." Somewhere in New York, a young African-American teacher watching the live stream began to cry. "We are the continent with everything," Traoré said, "and yet we are treated like nothing." He folded the drawing carefully, as if it was sacred. "We don't need pity. We need respect." For the first time, Trump had no reply. The camera zoomed in as Traoré opened a brown envelope marked "Confidential." A murmur rippled through the room. "These," he said, holding up the documents, "are not stories. These are facts, contracts, agreements signed by foreign governments. They take 75% of our gold. We are left with 25% and 100% of the destruction. Would you like me to also give you a few versions depending on your goal? For example, for a movie script, for a powerful viral speech, for a novel scene, more emotional version. Here's a rewritten version of your powerful scene, tightened, cinematic, and deeply emotional." He raised one sheet of paper high. The logos of powerful mining companies flashed on the screen behind him, alongside confidential U.S. government signatures. "This one," Traoré continued, voice steady, "allows foreign troops to operate on our land without even informing our parliament. That's not partnership. That's invasion, bought with silence." Trump blinked rapidly. "I came here in peace," Traoré said, "but peace cannot grow where truth is buried." The audience was stunned. The moderator tried to interrupt, but Traoré raised a hand softly. "I buried a soldier last month. He died defending a mine owned by a company that pays no tax to our government. His mother now begs in the market to feed his grandchild." In the back row, a journalist wiped tears from her eyes. "We don't hate the West," Traoré continued, "but we will no longer kneel for it." He let the envelope drop onto the podium. It landed with a soft thud that seemed to echo through the frozen room. Scanning the audience, Traoré's gaze locked onto a woman in the third row, middle-aged, white, an American flag pin on her jacket. Tears glistened on her cheeks. She was shaking. Traoré stepped forward, away from the mic. "Madam," he asked gently, "are you all right?" The camera zoomed in. Around the world, viewers leaned closer to their screens. She stood up, her voice trembling. "My name is Sarah Williams. My son served in Africa. He died in a village ambush in Niger. I was told he died a hero." She swallowed hard, "But after hearing you, I don't know what to believe anymore." The room held its breath. Even Trump was silent. "I am sorry for your loss," Traoré said softly, "but heroes should never die for lies. He deserved the truth. So do you." Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. "He told me, before he died, that something felt wrong," she whispered. "That he wasn't protecting peace, he was protecting pipelines." Her voice cracked. "Thank you for saying what others wouldn't." The audience slowly stood, not for applause, but out of respect. Traoré bowed his head. In her pain, she had spoken the truth of millions on both sides of the ocean, and for once, there were no sides, only sorrow. Suddenly, the giant screen lit up behind him. A video played. A boy, maybe 9 years old, lay in a hospital bed. His chest rose slowly under thin blankets. Tubes fed oxygen into his frail body. His eyes, sunken but full of light, blinked slowly toward the camera. A voice read over the footage. "My name is Adama. I'm from Mali. I was playing football when a drone hit our neighborhood. My brothers didn't survive. I missed them." Gasps swept through the summit. Even the translator's voice cracked. Trump closed his eyes for a moment, but the image stayed. Traoré stepped aside, letting the boy's face speak louder than any argument. "This child did not ask for war," Traoré said. "He asked for a ball, a dream, a future." He turned again to the room. "I met him last week. He told me, tell them we are not their enemies. And so now, I tell you, we are not your enemies." The screen faded, but silence remained. In South Africa, an old woman whispered, "God bless this man." In Harlem, a teenager slammed his laptop shut, his eyes wet with tears. Online, the world wasn't just watching anymore. They were feeling and listening. Suddenly, from the back of the hall, a tall man in uniform rose. U.S. four-star General Raymond Clark, head of Western Africa operations, stepped forward and took the microphone. With respect, he said, his voice deep, I need to speak. The moderator hesitated, but Traoré nodded, allowing him. I served in Africa for 8 years, the general said. I saw our flags flying over schools, over oil rigs, but never over hospitals. He paused, the weight heavy in his chest. We trained soldiers, but we didn't train justice. We built bases, not trust. The cameras zoomed in. The audience sat frozen. I read the reports about Adama, the boy from Mali. We failed him. A murmur rippled through the room. General Clark turned to Traoré. You are not our enemy. You are the mirror we've been avoiding. And then, to the shock of everyone, he saluted. No applause followed, only quiet tears. Somewhere in Nairobi, a teenager watching whispered, maybe they're finally listening. But the moment wasn't over. Backstage, a staff member rushed forward, handing Traoré a small envelope. This just came in from Chad, she whispered. It's urgent. He opened it slowly. Inside was a letter, the handwriting shaky. The translator read it aloud, the words projected onto the giant screen. Dear Captain Traoré, I am writing from a refugee camp near the border. I am 14 years old. My name is Amina. My father was killed when our village was bombed. My little brother cries at night. My mother sells soap to buy us bread. They told us the West came to help, but we haven't seen help. Please don't stop speaking for us. Please don't stop fighting for Africa, Amina. The room broke. Some wept quietly. Even Trump sat stunned, arms crossed tightly. This isn't politics, Traoré said. This is about real children, real mothers, real suffering. And we, world leaders, sit in leather chairs while they sleep on dirt floors. He held up Amina's letter. You may not know her name, but her life is worth more than any contract, any resource. If you'd like, I can give you a final cinematic version that's even tighter, perfect for film or novel, shall I? Here's a rewritten version of your powerful closing scene. Keeping it cinematic, emotional, and flowing naturally, he gently placed Amina's letter beside the microphone. This is why I lead, he said softly. And for a moment, the world paused not to argue but to feel. The moderator announced the next speaker, but from the front row, another voice rose. It was soft, shaky. A young African woman stood up. She wore a simple long blue dress. No microphone amplified her voice, but her pain was deafening. She tried to speak, nothing came out. Only tears. Security moved forward, but Traoré raised his hand, firm. Let her speak. The woman handed a photo to a staffer who placed it on a large screen. A smiling man appeared, dark skin, bright eyes, standing beside her and 2 small children. Then the caption appeared beneath the image, killed in a convoy attack. Wrong place, wrong time. Finally, she found her voice. My husband was delivering medicine. A foreign drone mistook his truck for a threat. The room froze. He was all we had. Now my son asks me every night, when is Papa coming back? Her voice broke. I don't know how to answer. She broke down, sobbing, and many in the audience did. Traoré stepped down from the stage. He didn't give a speech. He simply walked over and embraced her, not as a leader, but as a human being. And the world watched in absolute silence. Thousands of miles away in California, the summit streamed live in classrooms and lecture halls. At Stanford University, a young white student named Emily Carter, daughter of a U.S. diplomat, sat in the front row. As Traoré's words continued to echo, she pulled out her phone, went live on TikTok, and whispered through her tears. I thought we were the good guys. Her hands trembled. My dad always said Africa was unstable, that we were helping, but I just watched a mother cry over a drone strike that killed her husband. We did that. Her live comments flooded instantly. I'm crying too. How do we fix this? I feel ashamed. Dut's eyes swelled with tears. Captain Traoré, you're the bravest man I've ever seen. I'm so sorry. On behalf of people who were blind, we see now. The clip went viral in under an hour. African teens reposted it. American veterans reposted it. Emily's words weren't political, they were human. And for the first time in decades, millions of young voices in the West joined African voices, not to lecture, but to listen. Traoré had just spoken for a continent. He had shaken the world awake. Just as the summit resumed, screens across the hall suddenly flashed with a breaking news alert. CNN and BBC and Legacy. A leaked recording. The tape played. It was from a closed-door meeting 3 months earlier. A Western diplomat's voice filled the room. As long as Africa stays dependent, we stay in control. Keep the leaders sweet. The people, they don't matter. Shock hit like a thunderclap. Leaders panicked. Some stormed out. Trump stared at the screen, his jaw tight. Traoré stood still, then calmly stepped back to the microphone. You told us to trust your words, but your secrets speak louder. He paused, the camera zooming in. This is why we are rising. This is why we are cutting the strings. From Dar to Detroit, people flooded social media, furious, tearful, awake. And in that moment, Africa didn't seem small. It looked massive. Bigger than borders. Bigger than politics. This isn't just about Africa, Traoré said. It's about dignity for everyone. The audience, even foreign diplomats, slowly began to clap, not for politics, but for truth. That evening the summit adjourned, but the world outside did not. Across Africa something began. Children, hundreds, then thousands walked quietly through the streets of Ouagadougou, Bamako, Lagos, Nairobi. They held signs made from crayons and cardboard. Let us dream without bombs. Stop stealing our future. We are not your projects. Listen. To Captain Traoré, they didn't chant, they just walked. In London, children painted a giant map of Africa on their school playground and wrote one word above it: respect. In Brazil, students traced Adama's face, the boy from Mali, and held posters that read his life matters. In Washington, D.C., a group of kids walked quietly to Capitol Hill and sat down in silence. Cameras captured every moment. In Burkina Faso, a little girl, barely 7, whispered to a reporter, "I just want my school to stay open and my mama to stop crying. If you'd like, I can now give you a fully polished cinematic version, like a film script scene, a novel-ready version, a speech version for viral delivery. Tell me which one you want, and I'll craft it. Here's your scene, rewritten, polished, cinematic, emotional, and flowing naturally." The reporter couldn't speak. Back in Geneva, in his quiet hotel room, Traoré sat alone, watching it all unfold live on his phone. And for the first time that day he wept, not out of pain but hope. As night fell, the moderator returned to the summit stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "before we close, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has requested one final moment." The audience sat up, breath held. Traoré walked slowly to the microphone. No notes, no papers, just his heart. "I did not come here to argue," he began, his voice steady but soft. "I came to remind the world that Africa bleeds quietly." His voice wavered. "We are tired of writing eulogies for children while foreign CEOs sign billion-dollar contracts on our soil." He scanned the room. "We are not weak, we are not helpless, and we are not invisible." Then he said something no one expected. "Mr. Trump."
Thank you.
The room froze. "Thank you for your words, because your criticism gave me the chance to speak not with anger but with truth." Even Trump's eyes softened, and now the world has heard us, not only through me, but through children, mothers, students, soldiers, strangers, people who were never meant to be heard. He looked directly into the camera. "Africa is not rising. Africa is awake." With that, he stepped back, but something unforgettable was about to happen. As Traoré turned to leave, Donald Trump slowly rose from his seat. The crowd fell silent again. He took a breath, adjusted his tie, and without speaking, walked toward Traoré. Security tensed. Traoré stood still. Trump reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded handkerchief, and wiped his eyes. Then, he did something no one had imagined. He extended his hand. Traoré looked at it. The world held its breath, and then he shook it. Not for approval, not for alliance, but for peace. The cameras flashed. The world erupted. Even Trump, overwhelmed, whispered, "You made me think deeper than I have in years." Traoré simply nodded. That's what truth does. In that moment it was no longer about politics or pride, but two men, from two worlds, shaking hands in front of millions. One led an empire, the other carried the cries of a continent, and somewhere, in a refugee camp, Amina saw it happen on a donated phone. She smiled softly. "Maybe tomorrow will be better," she whispered. That night, across the world, hope returned. But one final message was still to come, one that would echo far beyond the summit. 2 days later, a video appeared on YouTube. Its title, "For the Ones Who Were Never Heard." It opened with Adama's face smiling faintly from his hospital bed. Then Mayam's crayon drawing Amina's letter, Emily's tearful confession, the silent marches of the children, the handshake. Finally, Traoré's voice filled the screen. "To every African child who's ever felt forgotten, to every mother who lost a son to silence, to every person who believes dignity is not a luxury, know this: you are not alone. You are not small. You are the heart of this world. If you made it this far, you felt something real. If your heart is heavy, if your eyes are wet, that is not weakness. That is humanity. Please take 1 second to subscribe, because we need stories that matter. Like this video if you believe in truth over power. And comment below. Tell us, what did you feel? What must change? Because this isn't just a story." Soft music played as the screen faded to black.